The mate bond was supposed to be sacred, unbreakable, destined. So when Seren Voss felt the bond she had waited her entire life to complete suddenly reach past her and snap toward another woman, she did not scream. She did not beg. She simply watched the man she had loved since childhood place the ceremonial collar around someone else's throat and understood that everything she believed had been a lie. Theron Varek, Alpha of Valdris, the boy who had promised her forever beneath the blood moon when they were barely 16, did not even look at her as he claimed his new mate. The hall erupted in whispers, pitying glances, quiet laughter from those who had always resented her. Serene turned and walked out. She made it halfway across the courtyard before a voice stopped her cold. "Going somewhere, little wolf?" She knew that voice. Every wolf in the Northern Territories knew it. Cale Draven, Alpha of Ashenmoor, the enemy of her pack. The man her people had been at war with for 3 generations. He stood in the shadows like he owned them, silver eyes gleaming in the torchlight. "I have a proposal," he said. "I'm not interested in anything you have to offer." "You haven't heard my terms." He stepped closer and she felt his power roll over her like a winter storm. "Come with me. Be my mate instead. And I will make Theron Varek regret every breath he takes for the rest of his miserable life." Seren should have refused, but she had nothing left to lose. Neither of them understood what that single word, yes, would awaken. 6 hours earlier, the Great Hall of Valdris had been decorated for a celebration. Silver banners hung from the vaulted ceilings. Thousands of candles burned in iron chandeliers, casting warm light across the faces of the gathered wolves. The scent of pine and ceremonial incense filled the air, thick and heady. Tonight was the claiming moon, the most sacred ritual in wolf tradition. Tonight, unmated alphas would choose their mates, and bonds would be sealed that could never be broken. Seren stood near the front of the hall, exactly where she had been told to stand. Her dress was white, threaded with silver. Her dark hair had been braided with moonstones. She looked like a bride already, and why shouldn't she? Everyone knew what was about to happen. Everyone knew Theron would choose her. They had been promised to each other since before they could walk. Their fathers had arranged it, their mothers had blessed it, and the pack had celebrated it as the union that would finally bring stability to Valdris after decades of internal conflict. Seren was the daughter of the former Beta, the most respected bloodline after the Alpha's own. Theron was the heir who had become Alpha 2 years ago when his father died in battle against Ashenmoor. They were perfect for each other. Everyone said so. Seren believed it too. She had spent her whole life believing it. She watched Theron now as he moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations from elders, clasping hands with warriors who had fought beside him. He was beautiful in the way all alphas were beautiful. Tall and broad-shouldered, with dark hair that fell across his forehead and eyes the color of autumn leaves. When he smiled, it transformed his entire face. He hadn't smiled at her in months. Seren pushed the thought away. He had been busy. The war with Ashenmoor had intensified, and there were border disputes, council meetings, and endless responsibilities. Of course he had been distant. That didn't mean anything. Tonight, everything would change. Tonight, he would place the collar around her throat, speak the sacred words, and she would finally become what she had always been meant to be. His Luna, his mate, his forever. "You look nervous," a voice said beside her. Seren turned to find her younger sister Naya watching her with worried eyes. At 19, Naya was 3 years younger than Seren, softer in both face and temperament. Where Seren had their father's sharp features and iron composure, Naya had their mother's gentle beauty and open heart. "I'm fine," Seren said. "You're shaking." Seren looked down at her hands. Naya was right. She clasped them together to hide the tremor. "It's cold in here." Naya didn't argue, but her expression said she didn't believe it either. He's going to choose you, Seren. He has to. The whole pack expects it. I know. And even if he didn't have to... Naya hesitated. He loves you. He's always loved you. Had he? Seren wondered. Or had she simply believed it because believing was easier than questioning? She thought of the way he used to look at her when they were young, the stolen kisses behind the training grounds, and the whispered promises under moonlight. Where had that boy gone? The ceremonial drums began to beat. A hush fell over the crowd as Theron climbed the steps to the raised platform at the front of the hall. The high priestess stood waiting, ancient and withered, holding the ceremonial collar in her gnarled hands. Tonight, the priestess intoned, our alpha claims his mate. Seren's heart pounded so hard she could hear it in her ears. Theron took the collar from the priestess. It was beautiful. Delicate silver links meant to rest against Aluna's throat as a symbol of the bond. Seren had dreamed about wearing that collar since she was a little girl. I have made my choice, Theron announced. His voice carried through the silent hall. A choice that will strengthen our pack and secure our future. Seren took a breath. This was it. Theron's eyes swept the crowd and landed somewhere to Seren's left. Lysara Morvain. Step forward. The world stopped. No. Seren's mind refused to process it. No, he said my name. He must have said my name. But a woman was moving through the crowd. Tall, golden-haired, elegant in a red gown that clung to her curves. Lady Lysara, daughter of the Western Province's lord, a woman who had arrived at court only 6 months ago. A woman Seren had barely noticed. A woman who was now climbing the steps toward Theron with a triumphant smile. The bond. Seren felt it then, felt the thread she had nurtured for years suddenly pulled taut, stretching past her, reaching for someone else. Her wolf howled inside her, confused and wounded. Theron placed the collar around Lysara's throat. I claim you as my mate, my Luna, my forever. Seren couldn't breathe, couldn't move, couldn't look away as Lysara smiled up at Theron and repeated the sacred words back to him. Around her, the crowd murmured. She felt the stares, felt the pity and the satisfaction and the shock rippling through the gathered wolves. She heard Naya's sharp intake of breath, felt her sister's hand reach for hers, but Seren was already gone. She slipped through the crowd like a ghost, her white dress trailing behind her, and walked out of the great hall without looking back. Behind her, she heard Theron call out, "Let the celebration begin." He hadn't even noticed she'd left. The courtyard was empty except for the shadows. Seren walked blindly, her feet carrying her away from the hall, away from the noise and the lights and the unbearable weight of what had just happened. She didn't know where she was going. She didn't care. She just needed to move, to breathe, to be anywhere but there. The night air was cold against her bare shoulders. She hadn't brought a cloak. Hadn't thought she would need one. She had expected to spend this night in Theron's arms, not fleeing through the darkness like a wounded animal. How had she not seen it coming? The signs had been there, the canceled dinners, the meetings that ran late, the way his eyes slid past her in crowded rooms. She had made excuses for all of it, convinced herself it meant nothing. She was a fool, a pathetic, lovesick fool. Going somewhere, little wolf? Seren froze. The voice came from the shadows near the courtyard's edge, low and mocking and immediately recognizable. She turned slowly, her wolf rising to the surface, hackles raised. Kael Draven emerged from the darkness like he had been waiting for her. The Alpha of Ashenmoor was nothing like Theron. Where Theron was warm coloring and easy smiles, Kael was all sharp edges and winter cold. His hair was black as a raven's wing, cropped short on the sides and longer on top. His eyes were pale silver, unsettling in their intensity. A scar ran through his left eyebrow, evidence of the violence his reputation promised. He was the enemy, the wolf her people had taught her to hate since birth. His pack had killed her uncle. His father had killed Theron's father. What was he doing here? The ceremony isn't open to outsiders, Seren said, her voice steadier than she felt. I wasn't inside. Cale tilted his head, studying her. I was waiting out here. For you. For me? I heard rumors that tonight might be interesting. His gaze dropped to her white dress, to the moonstones in her hair. It seems the rumors were true. The future Luna of Valdris has been cast aside. Heat flooded Seren's cheeks. I wasn't cast aside. No? Then why are you out here alone, dressed like a bride with no groom, while your alpha celebrates inside with another woman? She had no answer for that. Cale stepped closer, and she forced herself not to retreat. He moved like a predator, all controlled power and lethal grace. Up close, she could see the silver flecks in his pale eyes, could smell the winter pine and wood smoke scent that clung to him. I have a proposal, he said. I'm not interested in anything you have to offer. You haven't heard my terms. Another step closer. She could feel his power now, pressing against her like the weight of a snowstorm. Alpha dominance, but different from Theron's, colder, sharper. Come with me. Be my mate instead, and I will make Theron Varric regret every breath he takes for the rest of his miserable life. Seren stared at him. You're insane. Possibly. He didn't smile. But I'm also serious. Why would you want me? Our packs are at war. My people killed your father. Your people killed my uncle. Which makes you the perfect choice. Cale's eyes held hers unblinking. Imagine what it would do to Theron, to this entire pack, to see the woman he discarded standing at my side, his rejected mate, now Luna of his greatest enemy. The cruelty of it should have repulsed her. Instead, something dark and wounded inside her whispered, yes, let him see. Let him understand what he threw away. What do you get out of it? Seren demanded. A political advantage. He said it simply, without emotion. A Luna from an enemy bloodline legitimizes my claim to disputed territories. Your knowledge of Valdris strengthens my position, and, his lips curved slightly, I get to watch Theron's face when he realizes what he's lost. So I would just be a weapon to you. You would be protected, respected, given a position of genuine power. Cale paused. Can you say the same about what awaited you here? Seren thought of Theron placing the collar around Lysara's throat, thought of the pitying stares in the hall, thought of what her life would become now, the discarded almost Luna, an object of ridicule and sympathy. This is insane, she whispered. Perhaps, but you haven't said no. She should say no. Every rational thought screamed at her to refuse, to walk away, to go back inside and face her humiliation with dignity. But dignity hadn't protected her. Love hadn't protected her. She had done everything right, waited patiently, trusted completely, and it had destroyed her anyway. If I come with you, she said slowly, what exactly would this arrangement entail? A flicker of interest crossed his features. A formal mating bond, a political alliance. You would be Luna of Ashenmoor in title and authority. He paused. Beyond that, I expect nothing. No affection, no pretense of love. This would be a partnership of mutual benefit. Nothing more. No love. Just like what Theron had apparently felt all along. At least Cale was honest about it. And if I want to leave? After the formal bonding, you would be free to petition for separation after 1 year. I would not force you to stay. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. I am not in the habit of keeping unwilling prisoners. 1 year. 1 year of exile in enemy territory, and then she could walk away. Or she could stay here and spend the rest of her life watching Theron with another woman. When would we leave? Seren heard herself ask. Now? Tonight? Before anyone realizes you're missing. Kale extended his hand toward her. Do we have a deal? Seren looked back at the great hall one final time. Through the windows she could see the celebration continuing. Dancing, laughter, Theron and Lysara at the center of it all. She turned back to Kale Draven, enemy of her people, and placed her hand in his. Deal. His fingers closed around hers, ice cold even through her gloves, and a flicker of something unreadable passed across his face. Then we should go. He released her hand and turned toward the tree line. My wolves are waiting. Seren followed him into the darkness, leaving everything she had ever known behind. She didn't look back again. The journey to Ashenmoor took 3 days. They traveled through mountain passes and frozen forests, stopping only when absolutely necessary. Kale's wolves, a small contingent of 6 warriors, surrounded them at all times. They looked at Seren with suspicion, but said nothing. She was their alpha's business, not theirs. Kyle himself barely spoke to her. He rode ahead, a solitary figure on a black horse, his spine rigid and his gaze fixed forward. When they made camp, he gave orders to his wolves and then disappeared to patrol the perimeter alone. He didn't eat with them, didn't sleep near them. Seren told herself she was grateful for the distance. She needed time to think, time to process what she had done. Walking away with the enemy Alpha had seemed like strength in the moment. Now, surrounded by hostile wolves in unfamiliar territory, it felt increasingly like madness. On the 3rd morning, they crested a ridge and Ashenmoor spread out before them. Seren's breath caught. She had expected something brutal, a fortress of war built for function over beauty. Instead, she saw a valley cradled by snow-capped mountains, with a great castle of dark stone rising from the center. It wasn't cold or harsh. It was striking, dramatic, the kind of place that demanded to be noticed. "Welcome to your new home," Kale said beside her. She hadn't heard him approach. "It's beautiful," she admitted reluctantly. "It's practical." His tone dismissed the compliment. "The mountains provide natural defense. The valley is fertile. We're entirely self-sufficient." He urged his horse forward, and Seren followed, her stomach tight with nerves. The castle gates opened as they approached, and wolves emerged to greet their alpha. Seren felt the weight of their stares, the barely concealed hostility. To them, she was the enemy. The daughter of the man who had led raids against their borders, the woman their alpha had inexplicably brought home. She lifted her chin and met their gazes directly. She would not cower. She had made this choice. And she would see it through. A woman emerged from the crowd and approached Kale. She was older, perhaps 50, with iron-gray hair pulled back severely and sharp brown eyes that missed nothing. The authority in her bearing was unmistakable. "You've returned," she said to Kyle, "and you've brought a guest." "Not a guest." Kyle dismounted, handing his reins to a waiting stable hand. "My future Luna." Silence fell over the courtyard. The woman's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "I see." She turned to Seren, studying her with uncomfortable intensity. "Seren Voss, daughter of the late Beta Aldrich Voss, sister to the girl who remains in Valdris." She paused. "You have your father's eyes." Seren tensed. "You knew my father?" "I knew of him. He was a skilled warrior, a worthy enemy." The woman's lips curved slightly. "I am Helene Draven, Kale's aunt and the keeper of this household. You will address me as Lady Helene." Not a warm welcome, but not openly hostile either. Seren inclined her head respectfully. "Lady Helene." Helene turned back to Kale. "The council will have questions." "The council will have answers when I'm ready to give them." Kale's tone brooked no argument. "For now, have quarters prepared for Lady Seren in the East Wing. She is to be treated with the respect due to the future Luna of this pack." A murmur rippled through the gathered wolves. Helene's eyebrows rose almost imperceptibly. "The East Wing?" That's adjacent to your own chambers. I'm aware. Kale didn't elaborate. See it done. He strode toward the castle without looking back, leaving Seren standing alone in the courtyard surrounded by wolves who clearly wished she had never come. Helene gestured for her to follow. Come, I'll show you to your rooms. The interior of the castle was warmer than the exterior suggested. Fires burned in massive hearths, and thick tapestries covered the stone walls, depicting scenes of hunts and battles, and great wolves running beneath the moon. Servants moved quietly through the corridors, bowing as they passed. Her chambers were unexpectedly beautiful, a large bed draped in dark furs, windows overlooking the valley, a private bathing room with a tub that steamed invitingly. I'll send servants to attend you, Helene said from the doorway. The formal announcement of your engagement will take place tomorrow evening. I suggest you rest. You'll need your strength. Lady Helene? Seren stopped her before she could leave. Why did he really choose me? Political advantage doesn't explain why an alpha would mate his enemy's daughter. Helene studied her for a long moment. My nephew has his reasons. Whether he chooses to share them with you is not my decision. She paused at the threshold. But I will tell you this. Kale does nothing without purpose. If he chose you, it wasn't on a whim. She was gone before Seren could respond. Alone, Seren moved to the window and stared out at the unfamiliar landscape. Somewhere beyond those mountains, Naya was probably frantic with worry. Thevron was probably furious, his pride wounded by her defection. Good. Let him be furious. Let him finally feel something. A knock at her door interrupted her thoughts. Enter. The door opened, and Kale himself stepped inside. Seren straightened, surprised. I thought you said we would maintain distance. I said I expected nothing from you emotionally. He closed the door behind him, and the room suddenly felt smaller. But we need to discuss the terms of our arrangement before tomorrow's announcement. What terms? You made them clear in Valdris. The public terms, yes. He moved to the fireplace, his back to her. There are private matters we haven't addressed. Seren's pulse quickened. Such as? The mating bond. He turned to face her, his expression unreadable. For it to be legitimate, to be recognized by both packs, it must be completed fully. That means a ceremonial marking. She understood what he was saying. The bite. The physical claiming that would bind their wolves together permanently. You want to mark me. I need to mark you, and you need to mark me. He said it clinically, without emotion. Without the physical bond, the arrangement can be challenged. Theron could petition to reclaim you as a stolen asset. The thought of being reclaimed by Theron made her stomach turn. When? Tomorrow night, after the public ceremony. Seren absorbed this. She had known it would be part of the arrangement. She hadn't expected to face it so soon. And after that? She asked carefully. After that, we continue as agreed. A political partnership. Separate lives under the same roof. He paused. Unless you've changed your mind. She should have been relieved. He was offering her exactly what he promised. Protection without pressure. Power without intimacy. But standing here in his territory, watching firelight play across his sharp features, she felt the first flicker of something that wasn't quite relief. I haven't changed my mind, she said. Good. He moved toward the door, then stopped. One more thing. Yes? He turned, and for just a moment something cracked through his cold exterior. A flash of something almost vulnerable. Whatever happens tomorrow, whatever you see or hear, remember that you chose this. His voice dropped. And remember that I warned you I have no love to give. Before she could respond, he was gone. Seren stood frozen, her heart pounding with a question she couldn't quite name. What had he meant by whatever you see or hear? What was Kale Draven hiding? The great hall of Ashenmoor was nothing like the one in Valdris, where Valdris had been warm and golden, all candlelight and silver banners, Ashenmoor was darker, more dramatic. Iron chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings of black stone. Torches burned in sconces along the walls, casting flickering shadows across the faces of the gathered wolves. The banners here were deep crimson, emblazoned with the Draven crest, a wolf's head surrounded by thorns. Seren stood at the entrance, her heart hammering against her ribs. She had been dressed by Helene's servants in a gown of midnight blue, so dark it was almost black. Her hair had been left loose, falling in waves down her back. No moonstones this time, no white dress. Nothing that resembled the bride she had been 2 nights ago. This was a different kind of ceremony entirely. "Are you ready?" Helene asked beside her. "Does it matter?" "No." The older woman's lips twitched, but I thought I would ask anyway. The doors swung open, and Seren walked into the hall. Hundreds of wolves turned to watch her approach. She felt their hostility like a physical weight, pressing against her from all sides. These were not her people. They had spent generations fighting her pack, bleeding and dying at the hands of wolves who wore the Valdris crest. And now their alpha was asking them to accept one of those wolves as their Luna. Chaol stood at the far end of the hall on a raised dais, dressed in black as always. His expression was carved from stone, revealing nothing. But when his eyes found hers across the distance, something passed between them. A warning, perhaps. Or an acknowledgement. She kept walking. The whispers followed her like shadows. "That's her? The Valdris woman? Her father led the raid that killed my brother. The Alpha has lost his mind." Seren climbed the steps to stand beside Chaol, her chin lifted, her spine straight. She would not give them the satisfaction of seeing her fear. The High Elder of Ashenmoor stepped forward. He was ancient, even older than the priestess in Valdris, with a long white beard and eyes that had seen too much death. "We gather tonight to witness a claiming," the elder intoned. "Our Alpha, Chaol Draven, has chosen a mate." The crowd stirred restlessly. "However," the elder continued, his voice hardening, "before the bond is sealed, any member of this pack may voice their objection. If the objection is deemed valid, the claiming will not proceed." Seren's stomach dropped. This hadn't been part of what Chaol had described. Immediately, a man pushed forward from the crowd. He was massive, scarred, with hatred burning in his dark eyes. "I object." His voice boomed through the hall. "This woman is the daughter of Aldrich Voss. Her father killed my sons at the Battle of Thornwood. And now we're expected to bow to her as Luna?" Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. The man pointed directly at Seren. "She carries enemy blood. She was raised to hate us. How can we trust her to lead this pack? How can we trust her not to betray us to Valdris the moment she gets the chance?" Seren opened her mouth to defend herself, but Chaol stepped forward before she could speak. "Are you finished, Brennan?" His voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. The scarred man faltered slightly but held his ground. "I speak for many here, Alpha. This union is madness." "You speak for fear." Chaol descended the steps slowly, his movements predatory. "You speak for the past, for grudges that have kept our packs bleeding for 3 generations." He stopped directly in front of Brennan, close enough that the larger man had to look down at him. "Tell me, Brennan, how many wolves have we lost to this war?" Brennan's jaw clenched. "Too many." "And how many more will we lose if it continues? Your grandchildren? Your great-grandchildren?" Kyle's voice carried through the silent hall. This woman standing behind me had the courage to leave everything she knew. She walked away from her pack, her home, her family, to be here tonight. That takes more strength than any battle you've ever fought. Seren felt something shift in her chest. He was defending her. Not just politically, but personally. Chaol turned to address the entire hall. Lady Seren did not choose her father. She did not choose the war she was born into. but she chose to end it. His eyes swept across the gathered wolves. Anyone who cannot accept that choice is free to leave Ashenmoor. Tonight. Silence. Brennan's hands trembled at his sides, but he stepped back into the crowd without another word. Kyle returned to the dais and extended his hand to Seren. She took it, surprised to find his fingers were ice-cold, even colder than they had been in Valdris. "The objection has been answered," the elder declared. "The claiming will proceed." Kyle turned to face her, and for the first time she saw something beyond the cold mask. A flicker of something almost like respect. "I'm going to mark you now," he said quietly, for her ears only. "It will hurt. But I'll make it as quick as I can." She nodded, tilting her head to expose her throat. Kyle leaned closer. She felt his breath against her skin, cold like winter wind, and then the sharp pierce of his fangs sinking into the junction of her neck and shoulder. Pain lanced through her, bright and hot. But beneath the pain, something else bloomed. A thread, fragile and new, stretching between them. The bond. She could feel him suddenly, his presence in her mind like a shadow at the edge of her awareness. And what she felt from him was not coldness at all. It was loneliness, vast and aching and ancient. Kale withdrew his fangs and stepped back. His expression shuddered once more. Blood glistened on his lips. "Your turn," he said. Seren rose on her toes and pressed her mouth to his throat. She could feel his pulse beneath her lips, slow and steady. She let her wolf rise to the surface and bit down. His blood was cold, not cool, not room temperature. Cold, like snowmelt, like something that had been frozen and never quite thawed. It shocked her so much that she almost pulled away, but she forced herself to complete the mark. When she stepped back, Kale's eyes were fixed on hers. He knew. He knew she had felt it. But he said nothing. "The bond is sealed," the elder announced. "All hail the Luna of Ashenmoor." The response was scattered, reluctant. A few wolves bowed. Most simply stared with varying degrees of suspicion and resentment. But Seren barely noticed them. She was too focused on the bond humming between her and Kale, on the impossible cold of his blood, on the endless loneliness she had glimpsed inside him. What was wrong with him? What was he hiding? The celebration that followed was subdued compared to what Seren had witnessed in Valdris. There was food and drink, music played by a small group of musicians in the corner, but the atmosphere remained tense. Wolves approached to offer stilted congratulations, their eyes sliding away from hers the moment the formalities were complete. Seren endured it all with a frozen smile. Kale stood beside her throughout, a silent, imposing presence. He didn't touch her except when necessary, didn't speak beyond what protocol required. But she could feel him through the bond now, a constant awareness humming beneath her skin. He felt distant, controlled, like he was holding himself together through sheer force of will. After what felt like hours, Helene appeared at Kale's elbow. "It's time," she said quietly. Kale nodded and turned to Seren. "We should go." She didn't need to ask where. The consummation. The final sealing of their bond. They left the hall through a side door and walked in silence through torchlit corridors. Seren's heart pounded harder with each step. She had known this was coming. She had agreed to it. But knowing and doing were very different things. Kale's chambers were larger than hers, dominated by a massive bed draped in black furs. A fire burned in the hearth, but the room still felt cold, or maybe that was just him. He closed the door behind them and the sound echoed like a finality. "We don't have to do this tonight," he said. Seren turned to face him, surprised. "What?" "The marking is complete. The bond is sealed. The physical consummation can wait if you're not ready." His expression remained unreadable. "I won't force you into anything." Something about the way he said it, the careful distance in his voice, made her chest ache. "Would you prefer to wait?" she asked. My preferences are irrelevant. They're not irrelevant to me. Kale stiffened. For a long moment he simply stared at her, something unidentifiable flickering in his silver eyes. No one has ever asked me that before, he said finally. Asked you what? What I prefer? He said it like the concept was foreign, incomprehensible. I'm the alpha. I give orders. I make decisions. No one asks what I want. Seren crossed the distance between them slowly, her heart racing. Then I'm asking now. What do you want, Kale? His jaw clenched. She could see the war playing out behind his eyes, control battling with something deeper, something he was trying desperately to suppress. I want. He stopped. Started again. I want to touch you. But I'm afraid. Afraid of what? Of hurting you. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. I'm not. I'm not like other wolves, Seren. There are things about me you don't understand. Then help me understand. He shook his head sharply. Not tonight. Please. Just let me have tonight without that conversation. The vulnerability in his voice undid her completely. This cold, powerful alpha, feared by everyone, was standing before her asking for mercy, asking for time. All right, she said softly. Tonight, we don't talk. Tonight, we just see what happens. Relief washed across his features, then gratitude. He raised one hand slowly, giving her every chance to pull away, and touched her cheek. His fingers were ice cold against her skin, but she didn't flinch. You're warm, he murmured, almost to himself. So warm. And you're cold? She placed her hand over his, pressing his palm more firmly against her face. Why is that? Not tonight, he repeated. Then he kissed her. His lips were cold at first, but they warmed against hers. The kiss was careful, almost tentative, nothing like what she would have expected from a man with his reputation. She felt his restraint, felt him holding himself back. She didn't want him to hold back. Seren deepened the kiss, her hands finding his chest, feeling the hard muscle beneath his shirt. He made a low sound in his throat, something between a groan and a growl, and his arms came around her, pulling her closer. The temperature in the room seemed to drop as his control began to slip. She felt it across their connection, the effort it took him to stay gentle, to move slowly, and to keep whatever was inside him contained. When his hands found the laces of her gown, his fingers were shaking. Are you sure? He asked against her mouth. Yes. He undressed her with aching slowness, his cold hands leaving trails of sensation across her heated skin. The contrast was shocking, electric, unlike anything she had experienced before. First one shoulder, his fingertips trailing lightly against her skin, then the other, the same careful gentleness. The silk clung to her breasts for a moment before whispering down her body, pooling around her feet with a soft sigh. When they finally came together, Seren gasped at the cold of him inside her. It should have been uncomfortable. It should have been wrong. Instead, it felt like fire and ice meeting, creating something entirely new. Kale moved carefully, watching her face, adjusting when she tensed. His expression was one of fierce concentration, as if he was fighting a battle only he could see. You can let go, she whispered. No. The word came out strained. If I let go, I'll hurt you. You won't. You don't know that. His eyes met hers and she saw fear there. Genuine terror. You don't know what I am. But she was beyond caring about warnings. She pulled him closer, urged him deeper, and felt the moment his control finally cracked. The cold intensified. Frost spread across the sheets beneath her fingers. His eyes flickered, silver bleeding to white, and the pleasure that crashed through her was like nothing she had ever imagined. Afterward, they lay tangled together in silence. The frost was melting, leaving the sheets damp. Kale's breathing was ragged, his face buried against her shoulder. "I'm sorry," he said. "For what?" "The cold. The ice. I tried to control it." Seren looked at the patterns of frost still visible on the bed frame, the thin layer of ice that had formed on the water pitcher by the bed. "What are you, Kale?" she asked quietly. He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "Cursed." Before she could ask more, he pulled away, rising from the bed. She watched him dress in the darkness, his movements sharp and efficient. "Sleep," he said without looking at her. "Tomorrow will be difficult." "Kale, wait." But he was already gone, the door closing softly behind him. Seren lay alone in the massive bed, her body still humming with sensation, her mind spinning with questions. Cursed. He had said he was cursed, and through the bond, beneath the loneliness she had felt before, she now sensed something else. Shame. Crushing, devastating shame. What had happened to him? The days that followed fell into an unexpected pattern. Seren woke each morning alone. Kale already gone to attend to pack business. She spent her mornings with Helene, learning the operations of the household, the names and histories of key pack members, the complicated dynamics she would need to navigate as Luna. But Kale came to her chambers every night. He never stayed until morning. He never spoke about what had happened that first night, about the curse he had mentioned. But he came to her, touched her with that same careful restraint, and left before dawn without explanation. Each time, the ice was a little less severe. Each time, his control lasted a little longer. And each time, Seren felt the bond between them growing stronger. She could sense his moods now through the connection, could feel when he was troubled or tired or frustrated. She found herself thinking about him constantly, wondering where he was, what he was doing, whether he thought about her as often as she thought about him. She was falling for him. She knew it, and the knowledge terrified her. 2 weeks after her arrival, Seren finally asked Helene the question she had been avoiding. What happened to him? They were in the solar, reviewing household accounts. Helene's quill paused over the ledger. "You'll have to be more specific." "The cold, the ice, the curse he mentioned." Seren set down her own quill. "He turns rooms to winter when he loses control. His blood is cold. His skin is cold. That's not normal, even for an alpha." Helene was silent for a long moment. Then she set her ledger aside and folded her hands in her lap. "What I'm about to tell you cannot leave this room." Seren nodded. "Kale's mother was a wolf. His father, my brother, was the Alpha of Ashenmoor. But Kale's grandmother, my mother, was not a wolf at all." Helene's eyes held hers steadily. She was a winter witch, a woman of considerable power who had hidden her nature to marry into the pack. Seren's breath caught. "A witch?" "When she was discovered, my father had her executed. He considered magic an abomination." Helene's voice was flat, emotionless, but Seren could see the pain beneath the surface. "But the magic didn't die with her. It passed to her children. To me, and to my brother, and eventually to Kale." "You have magic too?" "A small amount. Enough to see things others cannot, to sense truth from lies. But Kale..." Helene shook her head slowly. "Kale inherited the full force of our grandmother's power. Winter lives inside him. He generates cold the way other wolves generate heat. When his emotions are strong, when he loses control, the ice comes." Seren thought of the frost spreading across the sheets, the chill of his touch, the desperate restraint she felt through their bond. "That's why he keeps everyone at a distance," she said slowly. "He's afraid of hurting them." "He hurt someone once." Helene's voice dropped. "Before he learned to control it. He was 15. A girl he cared for. She didn't survive the winter that came from inside him." Horror washed through Seren. He killed someone? Accidentally, unintentionally, but the result was the same. Helene's eyes glistened briefly before she blinked the emotion away. He has never allowed himself to feel deeply for anyone since. The colder his heart, the easier the power is to control. The moment he cares, she trailed off. The moment he cares, the ice comes back. Yes. Helene studied her intently. You must understand. When he chose you, he believed he was choosing someone he could never love, an enemy, a political arrangement, someone who would hate him too much to ever warm his heart. Seren felt the blood drain from her face. But that's not what's happening, is it? She whispered. No. Helene's voice was gentle now, almost sad. I've watched him these past 2 weeks. The way he looks at you when he thinks no one is watching. The way he says your name. She paused. He's starting to feel something, Seren. And that terrifies him more than any battle ever could. Seren stood abruptly, knocking her chair back. Her mind was racing, her heart pounding. He had chosen her because he thought he could never love her. He had warned her he had no love to give. But the bond between them was growing stronger every day. She could feel his presence even now, somewhere in the castle, a cold flame burning at the edge of her awareness. What happens if he falls in love? She asked, her voice barely steady. Helene's silence was answer enough. That night, when Kale came to her chambers, Seren was waiting by the window. You've been speaking with my aunt, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes. He stopped just inside the doorway, tension visible in every line of his body. Then you know. I know what she told me. Seren turned to face him. I know about your grandmother, about your power, about what happened when you were 15. Pain flickered across his features before he could suppress it. And now you're afraid of me. No. He laughed bitterly. You should be. But I'm not. She crossed to him, stopping close enough to feel the cold radiating from his body. I'm afraid for you. There's a difference. His silver eyes searched her face. Why would you be afraid for me? Because I'm falling in love with you, she thought. Because every day I spend here, every night you come to me, I feel myself caring more, and if Helene is right, my love might kill you. But she couldn't say that. Not yet. Not when she didn't fully understand what was happening between them. Instead, she said, because you're trying so hard to protect everyone else that no one is protecting you. Something cracked in his expression. For just a moment the mask fell away entirely, and she saw the boy underneath, the one who had accidentally killed someone he cared for, the one who had built walls of ice around his heart to keep everyone safe. Seren. Her name sounded like a prayer on his lips. She reached for him, and he let her pull him close. His body was rigid at first, fighting the comfort she offered. Then slowly, gradually, he relaxed against her. I don't know how to do this, he admitted quietly. I don't know how to let someone in without destroying them. We'll figure it out, she said. Together. The word hung in the air between them. Together. Not enemies. Not a political arrangement. Something more. Kale pulled back to look at her, his eyes searching. You should leave. Go back to your sister. Find someone who can give you a normal life. I don't want a normal life. The truth of it surprised even her. I want to stay. Why? Because of the way you defended me to your pack. Because of how careful you are with me, even when it costs you. Because when I'm with you, I feel more like myself than I ever did with Theron. Because you're not the monster you think you are, she said. And I want to be here when you finally realize that. Kale stared at her for a long moment. Then he leaned down and pressed his forehead to hers, his breath cold against her lips. You may be the most foolish woman I've ever met, he murmured. Probably. And the bravest. His mouth found hers, And this time, there was no restraint, no hesitation. He kissed her like she was the only warmth in his entire frozen world. The ice came anyway. Frost crept across the window glass, spread patterns across the stone walls. But Seren didn't care. She held him tighter, kissed him deeper, and refused to let go. Later, as they lay together in the cold aftermath, Kale's fingers traced idle patterns on her shoulder. "A message arrived today," he said, "from Valdris." Seren tensed. "What did it say?" "Theron is demanding your return. He claims the mating bond was completed under duress, that you were kidnapped." A bitter smile curved his lips. "He's threatening war if I don't send you back." Her blood ran cold. "And what will you do?" Kyle was silent for a long moment. Then he rolled to face her, his silver eyes burning in the darkness. "Let him come," he said. "Let him bring his entire army. He abandoned you, discarded you, and treated you as something disposable." His voice dropped to a deadly whisper. "If he wants you back now, he'll have to go through me." Seren's heart pounded. Across their connection, she felt his emotions for the first time without any barriers. Fury, protectiveness, and beneath it all, something that felt dangerously close to love. Before she could respond, a knock shattered the moment. "Alpha," a warrior's voice, urgent. "Riders at the border. They're carrying the Valdris banner." Kyle was on his feet instantly, pulling on clothes with military efficiency. "How many?" 50. "And Alpha? Theron Varric is leading them himself." Seren's stomach dropped. Theron was here. Already. And he was coming for her. Kale turned to her, his expression hard as iron. "Stay in your chambers. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone but me or Helene." "Kale? Promise me." The fear in his voice, carefully buried beneath the authority, broke her heart. "I promise." He was gone before she could say anything else, leaving her alone with the cold and the terrifying certainty that everything was about to change. Seren didn't stay in her chambers. She couldn't. Not when Kale was walking into a confrontation with the man who had humiliated her, the man who had thrown her away like she meant nothing. She needed to see Theron's face when he realized she wasn't coming back. She dressed quickly and slipped through the castle corridors, following the sound of raised voices toward the main courtyard. By the time she reached the balcony overlooking the entrance, the confrontation was already underway. Theron stood at the head of his warriors, magnificent in his golden armor, his autumn-colored eyes blazing with righteous fury. He looked every inch the Alpha King, the hero come to rescue his stolen bride. It made her sick. "You've committed an act of war, Draven." Theron's voice carried across the courtyard. "You stole a woman of my pack, forced her into a mating bond against her will. I'm here to take her home." Kale stood on the castle steps, his wolves flanking him in silent formation. The cold radiating from him was visible now, frost forming on the stone beneath his feet. "Stolen?" Kale's voice was dangerously soft. "She came to me willingly. She chose me willingly. The only one who forced anything was you, when you humiliated her in front of your entire pack." She was confused, hurt. She didn't know what she was doing. She knew exactly what she was doing. Kale descended a single step, and several of Theron's warriors shifted nervously. She was escaping a man who didn't deserve her. Theron's jaw clenched. "I am her rightful alpha. Her bond to you is illegitimate. Her bond to me is sealed and consummated." The words dropped like stones into still water. "She bears my mark. I bear hers. There is nothing illegitimate about it." Seren watched Theron's face contort with something ugly. Not love, not even genuine concern. This was wounded pride, nothing more. He didn't want her back because he cared about her. He wanted her back because she had dared to leave. "Seren!" Theron called out suddenly, his eyes scanning the castle. "I know you can hear me. Come out. Tell them this was all a mistake. Tell them you want to come home." She should have stayed hidden, should have let Kale handle this. Instead, she stepped onto the balcony where everyone could see her. Theron's face lit up with triumph. There you are. Come down. We're leaving. No. The single word echoed across the courtyard. Theron's expression flickered. Seren, be reasonable. Whatever Draven has told you, whatever he's threatened, he hasn't threatened me with anything. Seren gripped the balcony railing, her knuckles white. He's treated me with more respect in 2 weeks than you showed me in 22 years. That's not true. You chose another woman. Her voice cracked despite her efforts to control it. In front of everyone, without warning, without explanation. You put that collar around Lysara's throat while I stood there in my wedding dress waiting for you. Murmurs rippled through both groups of wolves. It was politics, Theron said, his voice hardening. Lysara's family controls the Western Province. We needed their alliance. Surely you can understand that. I could have understood politics if you had told me, if you had given me a choice. Seren shook her head slowly. But you didn't. You let me walk into that hall believing I was about to become your Luna. You let me hope. So this is revenge? You spread your legs for my enemy because I hurt your feelings? The crudeness of it made her flinch, but before she could respond, the temperature in the courtyard plummeted. Kale moved so fast he seemed to blur. One moment he was on the steps. The next, he had Theron by the throat, lifting the other alpha off the ground with terrifying ease. Speak about her that way again, Kale said, his voice barely human, and I will freeze the blood in your veins and watch you shatter. Ice was spreading from his hands, crawling up Theron's neck. The Valdres Alpha's face was turning blue, his eyes bulging with terror. Kale, stop! Seren rushed down from the balcony, pushing through the crowd of wolves. Stop! You'll kill him! She reached him and grabbed his arm. The cold burned her palms, but she didn't let go. He's not worth it, she said urgently. Please, look at me. Slowly, agonizingly, Kyle's silver eyes found hers. The white was bleeding into them, the winter inside him fighting to break free. He insulted you. I don't care. She pressed closer, ignoring the cold. I don't care what he says. He has no power over me anymore. But if you kill him, you start a war. Your people will die. My sister is still in Valdres. Please, Kale. Let him go. Something in her words reached him. The ice stopped spreading. The white faded from his eyes. He dropped Theron like garbage. The Valdres Alpha collapsed to his knees, gasping and clutching his frost-burned throat. His warriors surged forward, but Kale's voice stopped them. Take your Alpha and leave. If any of you set foot in Ashenmoor again, you will not receive another warning. Theron staggered to his feet, supported by his men. His eyes found Seren's, and what she saw there chilled her more than any winter. This isn't over, he rasped. You'll regret this, Seren. Both of you will. He was dragged away by his warriors, and within minutes, the Valdres contingent was retreating toward the border. Seren sagged with relief. But when she turned to Kale, her relief turned to horror. He was pale, too pale, and the ice wasn't just on the ground anymore. It was spreading across his own skin, crawling up his arms like living frost. Kale. He looked at his hands, and she saw fear flash across his face before he could hide it. I lost control, he said quietly. I let myself feel too much, and I lost control. What does that mean? What's happening to you? He didn't answer. His knees buckled, and Seren barely caught him before he hit the ground. Kale! She cradled his head in her lap, her hands shaking. Someone help! Get Helene! Get anyone! Wolves rushed toward them, shouting commands, but Seren couldn't hear anything over the pounding of her own heart. Across their connection, she felt something terrifying. Kale's presence, usually so strong and steady, was flickering, fading, like a candle being slowly suffocated. Stay with me, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Please, stay with me. His eyes found hers, silver fading to gray. I'm sorry, he breathed. I tried to warn you. Then his eyes closed, and he went limp in her arms. 3 days. 3 days of Kyle lying motionless in his chambers while the ice slowly consumed him. It had started on his hands and arms where his power had first erupted. Now it covered his chest, crept up his neck, spread across his cheeks like frozen tears. His skin was translucent, his lips blue, his breathing so shallow it was barely perceptible. Seren hadn't left his side. Helene had tried to make her eat, tried to force her to rest. She refused. She sat by his bed hour after hour, holding his frozen hand, talking to him even though he couldn't respond. You can't die, she told him on the 3rd morning. You haven't shown me the rest of Ashenmore yet. You promised to take me to the hot springs in the mountains. You can't break a promise to your Luna. No response. There was never any response. Through the bond, she could still feel him, but barely. A distant flicker where there had once been a steady flame. I won't let you go, she whispered. Do you hear me? I won't. The healers have done everything they can. Seren looked up to find Helene in the doorway, her face drawn with grief. Then we find someone who can do more. There is no one. Helene entered the room slowly. The curse is ancient. It was placed on our line generations ago by a coven of winter witches who wanted to ensure our family would never know love. Every alpha since has either remained cold and distant, or... She looked at Kale. Or this. There has to be something. Fire. Helene's voice was barely a whisper. The only thing that could theoretically break a winter curse is fire magic of equal or greater power, but fire witches were hunted to near extinction decades ago. The few that remain are in hiding, and we have no way to find them in time. Fire magic. The words triggered something in Seren's memory. A story her mother used to tell her before bed. A woman with flame-colored hair who could make flowers bloom in winter. My mother, Seren said slowly. She used to tell me stories about a fire witch and her family, a great aunt or a grandmother. I thought they were just fairy tales. Helene froze. What was your mother's maiden name? Ashworth. Mira Ashworth. The color drained from Helene's face. The Ashworth line, she breathed. The last known fire witch bloodline in the Northern Territories. They were supposedly wiped out during the purging, but what? But there were rumors that some survived, that they hid their magic, married into wolf packs, passed the power down secretly. Helene crossed to her, gripping her shoulders. Seren, think carefully. Has anything ever happened to you that you couldn't explain? Fires that started on their own? Unusual warmth when you were emotional? Seren thought back through her life, the way candles always seemed to burn brighter when she entered a room. The time she'd been so angry at Theron that the curtains in her chamber had caught fire, and she'd blamed a fallen candle. The way she always ran hot, even in the depths of winter. Oh gods, she whispered, you have it. Helene's eyes were bright with desperate hope. You have fire magic. It's been dormant, suppressed, but it's there. I can sense it now that I'm looking for it. But I don't know how to use it. I've never... You don't need to know how. Helene pulled her toward the bed. You just need to feel. The magic responds to emotion, just like Kale's does. If you can channel enough feeling, enough heat, you might be able to burn the ice away. Seren looked down at Kale, at the frost covering his beautiful face, and felt something ignite in her chest. Tell me what to do. Place your hands on his heart. Focus on everything you feel for him. Let the fire rise. Seren climbed onto the bed, positioning herself over Kale's frozen body. She placed both palms flat against his chest, over his barely beating heart. I don't know if I can do this, she admitted. You can. Helene's voice was fierce. You're his mate. Your bond is your bridge. Use it. Seren closed her eyes and reached for the bond. It was faint. So faint she could barely grasp it. But it was there. A thread of connection stretching between them, nearly frozen through. She thought of everything Cale had given her. The defense before his pack. The careful tenderness in the dark. The way he looked at her like she was something precious and rare. She thought of his loneliness, the decades of isolation, the weight of a curse he had never asked to carry. She thought of the love she had been too afraid to name. "I love you," she said aloud, the words breaking from her like a dam bursting. "I love you, Cale Draven. I didn't mean to. I didn't want to. But I do." Heat bloomed in her chest. "I love the way you protect everyone but yourself. I love the way you kissed my hand that first night because you thought I needed gentleness. I love that you're terrified of your own power, but you've never let it make you cruel." The heat spread down her arms, into her palms. "I love that you chose me when no one else would. I love that you let me choose you back." Her hands began to glow. "So you don't get to die." Tears streamed down her face as flames flickered to life around her fingers. "You don't get to leave me, not after everything, not when I finally found where I belong." The fire erupted. It poured from her hands into his chest, brilliant and golden. Nothing like the cold winter flames she had imagined. This fire was pure warmth, pure life, pure love made visible. The ice hissed and cracked. Seren screamed as the power tore through her, more than she had ever felt, more than she knew how to control. But she didn't let go. She held on with everything she had, pouring her heart into the flames. The frost retreated from Cale's face. Color returned to his lips. His chest heaved suddenly, drawing a gasping breath. His eyes flew open. Silver met gold as Serene's fire-bright gaze locked with his. "Seren?" His voice was raw, broken. "I'm here." She collapsed against him, the fire dying as her strength gave out. "I'm here. I've got you." His arms came around her, and she felt it immediately. He was warm, not cold, not frozen. Warm, like any other wolf, like any other man. "What did you do?" he whispered against her hair. "I think I broke your curse." She laughed weakly, tears still flowing. "I'm apparently a fire witch. Surprise." Cale pulled back to look at her face, his expression filled with wonder. "You're a fire witch," he repeated. "Dormant, hidden, until I needed to save the stubborn alpha I accidentally fell in love with." His breath caught. "You love me? Try to keep up. I just set myself on fire for you." A laugh escaped him, rusty and unused, but genuine. Then he was kissing her, his lips warm for the first time, his body radiating heat instead of cold. "I love you too," he murmured between kisses. "I've loved you since you walked into my territory with nothing but your pride and refused to break." Seren clung to him, overwhelmed with relief and joy and exhaustion. They held each other for a long moment, simply breathing together, marveling at the warmth that now flowed between them. The curse that had haunted his bloodline for generations was finally broken. They had done the impossible. But their victory was short-lived. Helene's voice cut through the moment, sharp with alarm. "The curse may be broken on Cale," she said quietly, "but someone placed it on this family in the first place. Someone who might not appreciate their work being undone." Seren pulled back, a new fear taking root. "What do you mean?" "Winter curses of this magnitude require maintenance, regular sacrifices of power." Helene's expression was grave. "Someone has been feeding this curse for generations, and they're going to know it's been broken." Before anyone could respond, a servant burst through the door. "My lady, there's a woman at the gates. She's demanding to see the Luna." The servant's face was pale with terror. "She says her name is Lysara Morvain, and she's brought an army of witches with her." Seren's blood ran cold. Lysara, Theron's chosen mate. The woman who had taken everything from her. And apparently, so much more than Seren had ever imagined. The army at the gates was unlike anything Seren had ever seen. Women in robes of ice blue and silver stood in perfect formation, their hands crackling with winter magic. At their head, resplendent in a gown of frozen silk, was Lysara Morvain. But she looked different now. The demure noblewoman act had been stripped away, revealing something ancient and terrible beneath. Her golden hair was threaded with white, her eyes glowed with pale blue light, and power radiated from her in waves. "Little wolf!" Lysara called out, her voice carrying unnaturally across the distance. "Come out and face me, we have much to discuss." Seren stood on the battlements, Kale at her side. He had insisted on accompanying her despite his weakened state, and she hadn't had the heart to argue. "Who are you, really?" Seren demanded. Lysara smiled, and there was nothing human in it. "I am the Keeper of the Frost, High Priestess of the Winter Coven. My ancestors placed the curse on the Draven line 200 years ago." Her eyes found Kale. "And you, little Alpha, were never meant to break it." "Why?" Kale's voice was steady despite everything. "Why curse our family?" "Because your grandmother stole something precious from us, the Heart of Winter, an artifact of immense power. She used it to bind herself to your grandfather, to infiltrate your pack." Lysara's expression twisted with ancient hatred. "When she was discovered and executed, the heart was lost. We've been searching for it ever since." "And the curse?" "Insurance and punishment." Lysara's gaze swept over the castle walls. "Every Draven Alpha who feels love will die, feeding their life force back to us, making us stronger. It was a perfect arrangement, until she ruined everything." Her glowing eyes fixed on Seren, a fire witch, hidden in plain sight among the wolves. "We should have killed your mother when we had the chance, but she was so well hidden, so thoroughly suppressed. We never imagined her magic would pass to her daughter." Seren's hands clenched. "You knew about my mother?" "We knew there were Ashworth survivors. We've been hunting them for decades." Lysara's smile widened. "Imagine my surprise when I discovered the last Ashworth daughter had been betrothed to the Alpha of Valdris. Such a perfect opportunity. I simply had to ensure you never bonded with anyone who might awaken your power." Understanding crashed through Seren like a wave. "You manipulated Theron. You made him choose you." "It wasn't difficult. A few enchantments, a few carefully placed suggestions. Men are so easily led when you know which strings to pull." Lysara laughed coldly. "He was supposed to bond with you, keep you close and controlled, while I drained his pack's resources from within. But you had to go and ruin everything by running to the one Alpha whose curse I was personally maintaining." "You've been feeding Kale's curse," Seren realized. "All these years. My mother before me, her mother before her. The Draven line has sustained our coven for generations." Lysara's expression hardened. "And you've severed that connection. Do you have any idea how much power you've cost us?" "Good." Seren stepped forward, and flames flickered to life around her hands. "Consider it payment for everything your coven stole from my family." Lysara's eyes narrowed. "You think your untrained fire can stand against 200 years of winter magic, against an entire coven? I think you're about to find out." "Seren." Kale's hand closed around her arm. "You're not fully recovered. You can't fight all of them." "I'm not going to fight all of them." Seren turned to meet his eyes. "I'm going to fight her. The curse was tied to her power. If I can defeat her, the coven loses their anchor." "That's a theory, not a certainty. It's the only option we have." Across their connection, she felt his fear, his desperate desire to protect her. But she also felt his trust, his belief in her strength. "Then we fight together," he said. "Your winter magic is gone. I'm still an Alpha." A ghost of his old cold smile crossed his face. "I can still tear out throats the traditional way." Despite everything, Seren laughed. She turned back to Lysara. "Open the gates," she called to the guards below. "I'm going out there." The gates groaned open, and Seren walked out to meet her enemy with Kyle at her side. The coven parted as they approached, forming a circle around the two of them. Lysara waited at the center, power crackling around her like a storm. "You could have lived," Lysara said. "If you had just stayed in your little corner of Valdris, been a good obedient mate, none of this would have been necessary." "I was never very good at obedience." Seren struck first. Fire erupted from her palms in a blazing arc. Lysara countered with a wall of ice, the two elements meeting with an explosion of steam and force. The battle that followed was chaos. Seren fought on instinct, channeling everything she felt into flame: love for Kale, grief for her mother, fury at years of manipulation and loss. The fire responded to each emotion, growing stronger, burning brighter. But Lysara had centuries of training. She moved through complex spell patterns with practiced ease, sending shards of ice and gusts of frozen wind. Several times, only Kale's intervention saved Serene from serious injury, his wolf form tearing through magical constructs with savage efficiency. "You can't win," Lysara snarled, blood streaming from a gash on her cheek where Kyle's claws had caught her. "Your fire is strong, but it's wild, uncontrolled. You'll burn yourself out before you burn through me." She was right. Seren could feel her strength flagging, her flames flickering. "Kale," she gasped, "I need more. I need the bond." His voice was in her mind now, speaking through their connection. "Use the bond. Take whatever you need from me. It might hurt you. I don't care. Take it." Seren reached through the bond and felt Kale's strength flowing into her. His love, fierce and absolute. His faith, unwavering. His willingness to give her everything he had. The fire roared back to life, brighter than before. "What?" Lysara's eyes widened with shock. Seren didn't give her time to react. She channeled everything, every emotion, every drop of borrowed strength, into a single focused blast. The flames hit Lysara square in the chest. The Winter Witch screamed as fire consumed her, burning away centuries of stolen life. The coven members behind her cried out as the power that connected them snapped, their magic failing as their anchor crumbled. When the flames died, nothing remained of Lysara but ash scattered on the wind. Seren collapsed, her strength utterly spent. Kale caught her before she hit the ground. "Is it over?" she whispered. "It's over." He pressed his lips to her forehead. "You did it. You saved all of us." Around them, the remaining coven members were fleeing, their power broken, their leader destroyed. Ashenmoor wolves poured from the gates to secure the retreat, but there would be no pursuit. The threat was ended. Seren closed her eyes and let herself sink into Kale's arms. For the first time in her entire life, she felt truly, completely safe. Recovery came slowly for both of them. Seren slept for 2 full days after the battle. When she finally woke, she found Kale beside her bed, exactly where he had been when she lost consciousness. "You look terrible," she croaked. "You should see the other witch." His smile was tired but genuine. "How do you feel?" "Like I channeled enough fire to burn down a mountain." "You nearly did. The training grounds are going to need extensive repairs." She laughed weakly, then winced. Everything hurt. Kale's expression softened. He took her hand, and she marveled again at the warmth of his skin. It still surprised her every time. "Helene has been studying the curse," he said. "It's completely broken. Not just for me, but for the entire Draven line. Whatever you did, it severed the connection permanently. So your future children will never carry this burden." His voice caught. "You freed us, Seren. All of us." She squeezed his hand. "We freed each other." Over the following weeks, Seren learned to control her fire magic properly. Helene found texts from the old Ashworth family that had survived the purging, and Seren studied them obsessively, determined to master what her mother had been forced to suppress. She also received unexpected news from Valdris. Her sister Naya arrived at Ashenmoor on a gray morning, travel-worn and frightened but alive. "The pack is in chaos," Naya explained as Seren embraced her fiercely. When Lysara's true nature was revealed, when people learned that Theron had been manipulated, everything fell apart. "And Theron?" Naya's expression was complicated. "He's not well. The enchantments Lysara used, they damaged him when they broke. He's alive, but he's not the same." She paused. "He asked me to tell you he's sorry. For everything." Seren absorbed this in silence. Once, an apology from Theron would have meant everything to her. Now it felt like a message from another lifetime. "Tell him I hope he finds peace," she said finally. "But tell him to stay away from Ashenmoor. That part of my life is over." Naya stayed. Seren made her a permanent place in the pack, delighted to have her sister close again. With time, even the most suspicious Ashenmoor wolves came to accept Naya's presence. Spring arrived, melting the last of the winter snows. Seren stood on the balcony of the chambers she now shared with Chaol, watching the valley come alive with color. Flowers were blooming in the gardens below. Birds sang in the newly green trees, arms wrapped around her from behind. "The council wants to discuss the alliance proposals from the southern territories," Chaol murmured against her hair. "The council can wait." "They've been waiting for 2 hours. Then another few minutes won't hurt them." She turned in his arms, tilting her face up for a kiss. He obliged willingly, his mouth warm and soft against hers. "I have something to tell you," she said when they finally broke apart. "That sounds ominous." "I'm pregnant." Kyle went utterly still. "You're—" He couldn't seem to finish the sentence. "The healer confirmed it this morning." Seren watched his face, trying to read his expression. "Are you happy?" "Happy?" He laughed, the sound breaking from him like water from a dam. "Seren, I never thought I could have this. A mate I love, a child. A future that isn't defined by curses and cold." He pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. "I'm not happy. I'm terrified and overwhelmed and grateful, and I don't have words for what I'm feeling." "Those sound like pretty good words to me." He kissed her again, deeper this time, his hands cradling her face like she was something infinitely precious. "I love you," he said against her lips. "I love you too." She smiled. "Now go deal with the council before Helene murders both of us." He laughed and released her reluctantly. Seren watched him go, her hand resting unconsciously on her still flat stomach. 6 months ago, she had stood in a hall in Valdris, waiting for a man to choose her, believing her entire future depended on his decision. She had been so wrong. Her future wasn't something to be given or taken. It was something she had claimed for herself, with her own strength, her own choices, and her own fire. And it was only just beginning. 1 year later, the naming ceremony was held on the first day of summer. The great hall of Ashenmoor was transformed. Gone were the iron chandeliers and crimson banners of war. In their place hung garlands of flowers, ribbons of gold and silver, and countless candles that filled the space with warm light. Wolves from both Ashenmoor and Valdris had gathered for the occasion. The war between the packs had officially ended 6 months ago, sealed by a treaty that Seren herself had helped negotiate. Old enemies stood side by side now, united by curiosity and cautious hope. Seren walked to the front of the hall with her daughter in her arms. The baby was beautiful, all dark hair and silver eyes like her father, but with a warmth to her skin that promised she had inherited her mother's fire as well as her father's wolf. Chaol waited at the dais, his face transformed by a smile Seren still wasn't used to seeing. The cold alpha who had terrified his own pack was gone, replaced by a man who laughed freely and loved openly. The curse had done more than freeze his body. It had frozen his heart, his ability to connect, to feel. Without its weight, he had blossomed into someone new, someone she fell more in love with every day. "She's perfect," Naya whispered from beside her. "Have you decided on a name?" Seren smiled. "We have." She climbed the steps to stand beside Kale, and together they turned to face the gathered wolves. "We present our daughter," Kale announced, his voice carrying through the hall. "Mira Ashworth Draven, named for her grandmother, who kept the fire alive even when the world tried to extinguish it." The hall erupted in cheers. Seren looked down at her daughter, at this perfect combination of fire and ice, of two families that had once been enemies. "She's going to change everything," she murmured to Kyle. "She already has." He pressed a kiss to her temple. "Just like her mother." Later that evening, after the celebrations had wound down and their daughter slept peacefully in her nursery, Seren and Kale stood together on their balcony. The stars were brilliant overhead, more than Seren had ever seen in Valdris. "Do you ever regret it?" Kale asked quietly. "Leaving everything behind? Choosing me?" Seren considered the question seriously. She thought of Theron, broken and diminished, struggling to rebuild a pack that no longer trusted him. She thought of the life she would have had as his Luna, always second-guessing, always waiting for his love to find her. Then she thought of Kale, of the way he looked at her like she hung the stars, of the partnership they had built, equal and honest, of the daughter sleeping down the hall, proof that their love had created something beautiful. "I didn't leave everything behind," she said finally. "I brought the important parts with me. Naya, my mother's memory, my fire." She turned to face him, taking his hands in hers. "And I didn't choose you, Kale. We chose each other. That night in the courtyard, when you offered me revenge and I accepted, neither of us knew what we were really choosing. We thought it was politics. We thought it was spite." She smiled. "We were idiots." Kyle laughed. "Complete idiots. But we figured it out. Together. And I wouldn't change a single moment of it." He pulled her close and she felt his warmth wrap around her like a promise. "Neither would I," he murmured. "You saved me, Seren. In every way a person can be saved." "We saved each other," she corrected softly. And standing there beneath the stars, wrapped in the arms of the man she loved, Seren finally understood what destiny really meant. It wasn't about fate choosing for you. It was about finding the courage to choose for yourself. Even when the choice seemed impossible. Even when everyone told you it was wrong. Even when you had to walk through fire to reach the other side. Love wasn't something that happened to you. Love was something you fought for. Something you built. Something you chose. Again and again. Every single day. And Seren Draven, Luna of Ashenmoor, Fire Witch, survivor, would keep choosing love for the rest of her life. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and leave a comment. I read every single one and they mean more than you know. Until next time.